Welcome to Impact Pasadena. I'm delighted to have as my guest Pasadena City Council member Gene Masuda. Gene, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We're having a further conversation. We started out and talked a little bit about your work in the city, your leadership in the city. We've talked about some of the financial issues challenges that are facing the city, and also the housing issues. So I'd like to turn in this segment to one of the other big challenges that we face, which is our public education system. And I know that the City Council is not directly responsible for the education and the public education. That's handled by the Pasadena Unified School District. But I know you keep a watchful eye on what's going on there. And there's a certain amount of history, I know, to education in Pasadena. Some of it's somewhat troubled, going back to the early days of busing, and a certain amount of white flight from our public schools, and also the large percentage of our citizens who send their kids to private schools, about 40%, I think. So POSD has faced challenges over the years. From what I understand, it's a pretty good school system. The teachers are dedicated. There's fairly adequate funding, but they have some particular challenges, and I know that that's come up lately with some of their fiscal issues.
Yes.
So could you talk a little bit about the importance of education in Pasadena, the challenges that we face, and some of the specific things with PUSD?
Well, you know my wife's a retired school teacher.
Oh, great. Mine is too.
All right. From Santa Monica.
Okay.
And when we got married and we went to this PUSD meeting, and it talked about a lot of things. We both went to public schools. The topic then was how the schools were doing in '85. There was only one school that had an API equivalent, which we don't use API anymore, equivalent of over 800 then. There was only one, and that was Don Benito. Now I believe we have over 10 or more that have done very well. I agree with you. Pasadena Unified School District is doing so much better. They have a very difficult time with funding. It's not like our city of Pasadena where we're getting we get funds from revenues that we generate. But they have to wait from Sacramento to decide how much they're going to make.
Every year they have their hand out.
Every year, how difficult is that? And then they were talking about closing schools. So it's a very difficult thing.
And part of it's based on enrollment, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And that's an issue. A lot of people don't realize that we're sort of past the baby boom echo or whatever it would be, and there's actually declining enrollment in the school.
When you were talking about housing earlier,
Yeah.
and the price of homes going up, and we were talking about how it squeezes families to a point where they no longer could afford here.
Yeah.
So we lose our enrollments that way as well.
And then there's a particular challenge for the student population because it tends to skew more low income and more minority, correct? So how do we overcome some of those challenges?
It's difficult, but there's a balance. I'm talking about one school that's doing very well, and that's in my district at Eugene Field. It's because they have Chinese immersion there. And at the very beginning, when I first heard about it, it was like kindergarten. And then now it just keeps going up because those kids just go up the grades, and pretty soon, they're all, involved. That school does very well because, the Chinese families, they really believe in education. So that brings up the scores as well. But back to your question, it's difficult. It's difficult to have that balance that we need to make sure that our schools stay, always doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I want to press a little bit on that because I know that the city is not directly responsible for that, but
Yes.
it's so critical to the future of the city.
Yes.
Our children and our education, and it impacts our economy in so many areas.
Absolutely.
And you say PUSD is a separate institution, and they have funding issues from the state. But is there anything that the city government can do to improve? I mean, one thing is encouraging a more diverse population to attend PUSD.
Yes.
And I know the mayor's been involved in some of these efforts, but what's your prognosis there on how that's going?
I think we all help, and we have a lot of council members that went to PUSD, and I really appreciate that. My son went to PUSD, went to PCC, then went to USC, and he's really enjoying himself now. Gosh, I wish I had a real simple solution. We all support the schools, our public schools, because in order to have a good city, an outstanding city, we have to have a good school system.
Yeah.
And that's so important. We're talking to the realtors.
Well, I was going to mention that because I think part of it's the story that we tell,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
That really, that story we tell is maybe a little bit that the realtors tell is really a little bit out of date.
Well, I hope it's improving. We invite realtors to visit schools. We have a group called PEN. They tell parents to come and visit all the schools. The Pasadena Educational Foundation, which I used to be on their board,
Yeah.
we collect a lot of funds to help our school system. And if we have more folks doing that, we'll be doing okay.
Well, and I guess the argument too is if you're considering a private school, the private school tuitions are sky high now, and if you have more than one child, PUSD is a real bargain, and the quality of
it is. And we encourage people to visit these schools. We really do, because they'll be really surprised how well the school is run. But it's that diversity that I think is very important to learn and to be around. So you'll grow up knowing that you're colorblind.
Yeah.
Because you've lived it, and you went to school with all.
Yeah.
kinds
Well,
of people.
I mean, on that subject, it's a delicate one sometimes, but we really have, people have called it the tale of two cities in some ways, because there's a certain amount of racial bias that goes into people's decisions about schooling their kids, and although, we most people would agree with you about diversity. Not everybody's on board with it when it impacts their family. So how do we, this is the larger issue, I guess, a bit, the income inequality that we experience in the city. We have some very wealthy areas, we have some solid middle class areas, and then we have some poor areas. And it's how to communicate across those divides. How do you see that, particularly in these day and age?
Well, be involved and educate people about what's going on. We're losing a lot of people from Northwest Pasadena. I'm sure we're still bringing them over to the schools that to integrate for them to experience all sorts of folks at a school. But as you know, your wife and my wife will tell you, parents have to get involved. And as my wife taught kindergarten, she knows from the very first day when the kids come to her kindergarten class which kids had stimulation at home. And she would say that she tries to teach the parents that they may not be able to have the time, but when you go to the grocery store, start lifting things up. And what's that? That's a banana. That's an orange. What's
Well,
this number?
I was going to say that the time issue is tough because you have a lot of people who work in a couple of jobs, and for them to be involved in the school is really hard. But
don't expect to send your children to school and they're going to just magically learn by themselves. It starts at home, and then joining the PTA and being involved and going to the open houses and things like that.
Yeah.
So the parents are the first teacher.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah. Well, on the education front, as I say, I have a kind of a personal interest because I'm on the Board of Trustees at PCC, but a couple things that we've done to address some of the problems we've talked about here is we have a Pathways program, which means that we give some priorities to Pasadena High School graduates to come to PCC. We now will pay for tuition basically for their whole 2 years through the state program and through the work of the PCC Foundation. But one of the things that I hear is we have all these people coming from outside of Pasadena who are taking up seats at PCC. What about our Pasadena residents? I always argue with them that because we're a great school, people are attracted and can come in. But I have heard some pushback about that. Is that something that has come up in your town meetings or from your constituents?
No, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, PCC is such an outstanding community college that people want to be there.
Yeah.
It has one of the highest transfer rates to go to a four-year college.
Right.
I mean, it's so successful, that's what draws the people in. So it's, and this is just one opinion.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. Not that people that are in the local area aren't able to go in. They are able to attend, but you have to have the desire.
Yeah.
And that desire is there because of the wonderful place PCC is.
Yeah, and we do provide.
And you should be very proud of that.
Oh, thank you, thank you, Gene. And we do provide. We will pay tuition for just so people know, for any graduate of the Pasadena school system, and any veterans who've just come out of service will pay for their tuition basically both years. They have other costs that we hope we can someday cover, but we want to give an incentive for people, and they always like something that's free, I think.
I think it's a great program. I was there at that breakfast when Dr. Verdian brought that up about that free tuition, and I thought, wow, this is really great.
It is, considering.
Yes.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about was, well, we talked a little bit about policing, and I know you're a big supporter of police and fire. What about crime in the city? Sometimes I live in a neighborhood that's pretty safe, but I'll hear about break-ins down the street, or I'll hear about what is your assessment of the crime level and our sense of safety and security in the city?
I think we have a very safe city. I don't think that crime is up. When I talked to our interim chief, John Perez, he says we're doing really well. Mm-hmm. But there are things that really bother me, and that's the early release program of people in prison, and now having legalized marijuana coupled with with the early release. I think we're looking for trouble in our neighborhoods.
How would that play out? Is that because there'd be more retail stores selling pot, or how do you see that? Would it be like the liquor store issue where it attracts the wrong element, or what's the danger here?
Well, we have not made pot shops legal yet, but we said that we will allow as many as 6. You have to be 600 feet away from a park, a neighborhood, a school, a church, no more than 1 per district. So it's going to be a difficult thing. And people were saying, well, you're going to make a lot of money from this in Pasadena, we'll be taxing it, but I don't think so. I don't think so. It's projected to make, I think, $1.5 million to $2 million.
Yeah, people are talking about all kinds of things. Yeah.
But that's going to be used for enforcement. But it's that element that it could create more crime. So the people that are out on the early release program, you know, there's supposed to be some rehabilitation and things like that.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't work, they're back in the neighborhoods committing crime. And with that marijuana, you know, piece, I think
Because of easy access to.
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they will be high and doing it, but it's just another sales product to sell illegally, because you're not a pot shop. You might be able to just try to sell it on your own. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense to me. And today, as I'm talking to you, I still don't believe that it passed in California.
Yeah.
But it has. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because I've traveled a fair amount in Latin America, and they're very concerned about the huge market for drugs in the United States, and it's caused so many problems for them. It's really at the root of a lot of our immigration issues too,
Yes.
because of the gangs. So this is a worldwide problem, and
Yes.
you know, we're not escaping it. Transportation. We talk about traffic, but we have this terrific metro line that's gone in, and it's going to be extended. Public transportation. We have a pretty good bus system, and we have. I don't use it, but there are some senior citizens who can call up and get somebody to take them to the doctor, and this is. I think
Dial
it's
ride.
Yeah, and people use it. So transportation as a general issue. Where do you come down on this?
Well, Mayor Bogart appointed me to the Gold Line Joint Powers Authority.
Okay.
Mayor Tornick appointed me to the Construction Authority. So I'm very involved in representing Pasadena.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the Gold Line is such a wonderful thing, and it's doing very well. Ridership is up. We had a little downtick of 2% from last year, but it's doing really well. Right now it's going to Azusa.
Yeah.
Now the next, you know, I forgot the 11 miles to
Right.
Montclair. So
Right.
now we'll be in San Bernardino. So
Do your constituents use it right there at the station on
Sierra Madre
Sierra-
Villa,
Yeah.
the one with the 1,000 parking spots.
spaces.
And that was really a smart thing, because that was the end of the line,
Yeah.
and now it's not anymore. But it's still, there's a lot of parking. People park there quite often.
So they'll park their cars and commute to downtown LA,
Yes.
for example, or
Yes.
elsewhere. Yeah.
Because I think what people are doing now is they're trying to get on early enough so that they don't hit the big crowd and they can't get on in the morning.
Yeah.
And the same thing in the afternoon. So we have some people from, say, South Pasadena complaining that the trains are so full by the time they get on, and sometimes they have a bicycle or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Sure.
there's a little complaint.
Yeah, they seem to be full when I see them. Autonomous vehicles.
Oh.
I'm actually excited about it. I'm a bit of a techie, and I think that, gee, you know, you have all the terrible accidents that occur because of human error, and even if there's occasional glitch in the autonomous vehicles, it's still going to save lives, I believe. Now, how it will impact our city and transportation and all that is an open question,
Right.
and when it will come down. People
Yes.
are talking about as early as the next year or two that we're going to start seeing these. How's the city preparing?
Well, it's coming faster than I thought. I was in Washington, D.C., and at the transportation meeting, and because I was there with the Gold Line staff members and other council members, and they were talking about autonomous cars, and it became a real big topic. And all the different events I went to, it was one of the main topics. And then they had that accident.
Yeah.
Where was that? That was Arizona?
Someplace like
Okay.
that. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boy, did it stop as far as
Yeah.
what a great thing,
Sure,
So
sure.
you have to be careful about how fast you go on things, and
Yeah.
it was something about a car went like this, and the second car behind them, there's that.
Yeah, there are certainly issues and bugs to be worked out.
Right.
I would just argue that the promise of it and these, however we feel about artificial intelligence and technology, it's a lot less fallible than our human beings. And you put a drunk kid behind the wheel,
That's
or
right.
a kid who's high, or somebody who's older and inattention. It does provide the promise anyway.
That's right.
Of some good things. But one of the things that people are saying about the municipalities is that it may actually increase congestion to some extent. I forget the argument about this, but
Because they won't stop. They'll just keep going,
yes,
and they won't park.
right.
So I
That's
don't
right.
know, but
That's right.
I don't think we need more traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, you have Uber now in the city, and I know for our students at PCC, that's an alternative but expensive way to get back and forth, but not having to own a car.
Right.
So that's one of the other issues is the Airbnb, which is in this sharing economy. Where has the city finally come down on Airbnb?
Well, we're
rentals?
allowing it.
Okay.
We're allowing it, and we're allowing second units as well, the granny flats.
Yeah.
And they're called accessory dwelling units,
Yes,
ADUs.
yes.
So these are all things that are coming with affordable housing.
Yeah.
But we're actually, with our second units, we're making the permits lower for family members.
Right.
But people can build a granny flat and convert their garage, and we can't require them to have parking. So we're doing our share when it comes to providing housing. We're really doing our share, and the state is pushing all the cities to provide housing, where some cities aren't doing their job.
No.
Yeah.
San Marino, we won't mention names. Yeah, and I think the Airbnb thing is interesting too. When I travel, I do take advantage of it.
Okay.
But I believe your rule is that you have to be a resident. You can't own eight houses and rent them out seriatim. Am I correct about that in Pasadena?
I think that I can't remember where we finally ended up, but yes, I think you have to be the owner, and you can't be like some landlord that's doing many of them.
Yeah.
So we have some rules on it. Yeah, absolutely.
What about senior citizens in our city? I know you probably have a fair number of senior citizens who are your constituents, and we have senior housing in complexes too, and we have the wonderful senior center in downtown Pasadena.
Yes.
What are some of the special needs that our seniors have, and how can the city provide for some of those?
Well, talking about senior centers, I have Monte Vista Grove that's almost across the street from me on San Pasqual, and a wonderful facility, and they've been working on their master plan. What do we need to do for the seniors, or what can we provide? We can provide what we're providing, having a senior commission, work with different senior groups, go out to the community and help seniors, but continue to improve on having senior housing. Senior housing is an easy call for the council members because we want it. Yeah, we want senior housing.
I'm very impressed because I've done events at Villa Gardens, and there are so many talented, energetic, community-minded seniors who are participating, and you would hate to lose that as a resource here. I mean, just as important as to have young people, it's great to have the older people who have the resources and time and intellectual firepower, to do things for the city, and they do.
Yes.
Yeah, they
Monte
really do.
Vista Grove, they're all volunteers. They go down to our schools and they read to the young students.
That's right.
And it's just a wonderful, heartwarming thing that they do.
Let me touch on a very other current topic, which is partisanship. I mean, as a country, we're seeing this. We're much more divided. a lot of the local offices and the local politics leans towards nonpartisanship. In other words, talking across the aisle. And I know that on the city council there are folks who are members of the different parties. But do you find that the partisanship has leaked in somewhat on the local level to our detriment, or do we still pretty much operate in a collegial way? Maybe that's a loaded question, because you'll probably say it is collegial, but...
No, it's a fair question.
Yeah.
I actually, when I was walking the district, when I was running, I was concerned about if there will be people that will be interested in that. But I can tell you that it was such a low percentage that cared about that. They actually really, and it sounds kind of pushy, but what you hear is, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
And they don't care about political parties. How are you going to help me if I call you? Are you going to respond to me?
Yeah.
And what if I can't get someone down at the city? Will you help me get someone? That's very, very important. So my field rep, which I haven't mentioned yet, Noreen Sullivan, she's on the front line, and she does a terrific job helping the people that when they need help.
Yeah, I should put a plug in for our field reps and for yours. What does a field rep do, really? What's their responsibility?
They have an office at City Hall.
Yeah.
I don't have an office at City Hall, but she has an office with all the other field reps, and they're on the front line. They answer the phone. That number, that when they call, and when she's gone doing errands and helping people, that phone rings, and she has to follow up on it. I know all the field reps do an outstanding job.
Yeah.
But let me just say, my field rep, Noreen, she's been with me from the very beginning.
I was going to ask you how long she's been working for you.
At the very beginning, and a
lot of those guys, those men and women have been.
Yes,
mostly women, I think.
Yes, and she is terrific. So when I'm having a district meeting and I'm reaching out to someone and saying, "Hey, Joe, are you coming to the meeting tonight?"
Yeah.
They'll say, is Noreen going to be there? I said, yeah, okay, I'll come.
Well, and you really can get an answer from these folks, and they'll tell you, hey, boss, we've got a resident with a problem, and that's her job to keep you. So it really is a responsive form of government.
You just have to respond to people. We both like community work.
Yeah.
So what Noreen and I have to be careful of is that we don't step on each other trying to respond to someone. He's, oh yeah, Noreen already called.
Well, I want to congratulate you on all your work. Thank you, Gene Masuda, for being my guest today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I really appreciate your time here.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gene. This program was produced by Pasadena Media for the Arroyo Channel.